of two superpowers are in Helsinki in Finland. Russia and the United States of America are charting a new course of ties. As we speak, Trump and Putin are holding a one-on-one meeting in the presidential palace in Helsinki, sans their advisors. Donald Trump addressed the media before the two leaders headed into their closed-door meeting. The meeting was delayed by an arch-courtesy Vladimir Putin, who kept the United States president waiting. The President of the United States said that he and his counterpart will discuss a range of issues from nuclear armament to military and trade. He expressed his hope that this meeting will start a new chapter in the strained relations of the two long-term adversaries. After a one-on-one discussion, the two leaders will then be joined by their advisors, and an extended meeting will take place. Following that, President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are expected to address a joint news conference. This meeting marks the first formal meeting between the two leaders since Trump took to Oval Office. However, Trump says he has low expectations from the summit. But as Trump made his way to the presidential palace, he was greeted by a huge banner that called him out over the treatment to the press. Finland's largest newspaper mocked Trump, put up a big billboard which read, "Mr. President, welcome to the land of free press." Close to 300 such billboards were put up on the route from Helsinki airport to the presidential palace where the two leaders are meeting. Earlier today, Donald Trump accused his predecessors for pursuing a foolish policy. Trump took to Twitter and also said that the relationship between the US and Russia has never been worse because of the stupidity of the United States of America. So the press conference will take place at 7:30. This will be a 90-minute long meeting. The meeting has started. It's taking place in Helsinki, and Helsinki is a neutral country. It's not aligned. It's not with NATO. And even previously the meetings, similar meetings had taken place in Helsinki. So Helsinki has a record of hosting such meetings. Even Brezhnev had a meeting. Even Kennedy went to Helsinki to meet his counterpart. So Helsinki in 60s and 70s had an important role to play when it came to Russia and America. Now, let me go across to Dan Ashby, our correspondent from Moscow. Dan, thank you for joining us from Moscow. Can you tell us what will be the takeaways and what are the areas which may be taken up by Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in the meeting?
Yeah, sorry for that slight disruption. Just caught the end of your question there. But President Trump has come in and said that he will be talking about China, our mutual friend, President Xi, in his own words, nuclear, military, trade. He said that between Russia and the US, they have 90% of nuclear capability between them. And he said that's not a good thing. That's a negative force for the world. So suggesting he wants to see a new SMART treaty, perhaps new treaties to reduce the military capability, particularly nuclear, of both countries. But I think the interesting thing is that President Putin said they would also be talking about hotspots. Now, of course, that may include Syria, it may include the Ukraine. I think Russia won't be talking about Crimea. It does not see that as an issue at all. But there has been some talk about whether President Trump will pull out any sort of US involvement in Syria, which would be good news to President Putin's ears. So the big question, though, for President Trump back home is, will he bring up alleged Russian interference in the US election? Of course, we saw that 12 Russians have just been indicted. President Trump at the moment is making very few noises that he will do that.
Dan, you were talking about the things which can be taken up, things which might not come up. So what are the areas which are not as controversial as Crimea? What are the other areas on which the talks can take place?
Well, I think there's just very little expectation going into these talks. The Russian side said they saw this as baby steps, to use their words. Just getting to this meeting is a success for the Russians. Of course, they've been facing a sort of pariah status by many countries around the world. So the very fact that President Trump is willing to come to Finland to meet with President Putin helps to bring Russia in from the cold, if you like. It's seen as a success for President Putin, who can grandstand on the global stage, so that Moscow still plays a pivotal role in many issues. But on the actual policy outcomes, they haven't really been promising very much. There is so little agreement agreement between the two states. And even though President Trump is promising a new relationship with President Putin, this is at a time when the US has pretty strong sanctions against Russia, and in President Trump's own words, the worst relationship in many, many years. So I think they will see it as a success if they can just get talking. Nobody's expecting any big policy outcomes. However, everyone will be watching very closely if there's an announcement on Syria.
Dan, you stay with me. For our viewers, before I go back to Dan again to Moscow, let us play out what Donald Trump had to say.
Well, first of all, Mr. President, I'd like to congratulate you on a really great World Cup, one of the best ever, from what everybody tells me, one of the best ever, and also for your team itself doing so well. I watched quite a bit. In the United States, we call it soccer, and I watched quite a bit of it, and I watched the entire final and the semifinals, and they were really spectacular games, but it was beautifully done. So congratulations on that. Most importantly, we have a lot of good things to talk about and things to talk about. We have discussions on everything from trade to military to missiles to nuclear to China. We'll be talking a little bit about China. Our mutual friend, President Xi. I think we have great opportunities together as two countries that, frankly, we have not been getting along very well for the last number of years. I've been here not too long, but it's getting close to 2 years. But I think we will end up having an extraordinary relationship. I hope so. I've been saying, and I'm sure you've heard over the years, and as I campaigned, that getting along with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing. And I really think the world wants to see us get along. We are the two great nuclear powers. We have 90% of the nuclear, and that's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And I think we hopefully can do something about that, because it's not a positive force, it's a negative force. So we'll be talking about that, among other things. And with that, the world awaits, and I look forward to our personal discussion, which I think begins now, and then we're going to meet our whole team. You have quite a few representatives on I do, and we all have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll come up with answers, most importantly. It's great to be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And let me go across to Diana, correspondent from Moscow. Diana, as you said to me in one of my earlier questions, that there are very low expectations. That's the word you used. Low expectations from the meeting. But the question is, then what is on the plate for US President Donald Trump and the Premier of Russia, Vladimir Putin? Then what's there on the plate for both of them?
In terms of what's at stake here, I mean, just trying to get the relationship going. And I think for Russia, what they really want is to lessen these sanctions that they have. The problem is for President Putin is that although President Trump might say that he is a good friend to President Putin, or at least he wants to be, he wants to improve relationships, President Trump has very little power to change those sanctions. So I think President Putin will be happy that President Trump has come straight out, complimented the World Cup. And of course, President Trump, interestingly enough, has gone into these talks actually attacking his own country, saying that it has been years of foolishness and US stupidity that has led to a deterioration in relationship, rather than saying, for instance, it is Russia's annexation of Crimea, or it's Russia's alleged involvement in Ukraine and meddling in elections. So Russia very much feels like it's on the front foot at the moment. It's got everything to gain and very little to lose. And I think it will want to use this meeting to try get some improvement and some outcomes that they can work on together. Of course, President Putin very much sees President Xi in China as an ally, and it'll be interesting to see where President Trump is taking that, considering all the talk around a trade war. But yes, this will be a victory for President Putin, and now we all await those policy outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for joining us from Moscow. As the French team makes history by being only one of the few nations to win the Football World Cup multiple times, it is just the beginning of celebrations for thousands of fans in France and across the world. No end to celebrations in Bondy, which is the hometown of France's star striker and the FIFA World Cup player of 2018. Kylian Mbappe. It was in his modest suburb located in the northeastern Paris that the 19-year-old grew up and played his first games. Mbappe began his career at Bondy, where he was coached by his father. Fans also gathered in Macon. Macon is the birthplace of Antonio Griezmann. To cheer for the France, Griezmann began his career playing for Macon. His father, whose family hails from Germany's Munster, was a town councillor in the city. It indeed is a beautiful game. Once the game was over, the leaders of the France, Croatia and Russia visited the team locker room to celebrate the finals. Take a look.
Je voudrais dire un grand merci.
Je suis la présidente de Croatie. Félicitations. Vive la France. Putin, 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 Président, 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 président,
Predsjednik Macron, da svi dođemo, da svi čestitamo reprezentaciji. Naš. Toliko ste bili dobri večeras. Malo je fala.
As France cruised to winning its second World Cup, defeating spirited Croatia, its President Emmanuel Macron ensured his presence worked to boost the team's morale. President Macron made his way to the changing room, occupied with ecstatic French players dancing way to glory. Benjamin Mendy was quick to have Macron join the celebratory dance as the pair dabbed alongside Paul Pogba.
Président, c'est quoi le nouveau geste maintenant?
And I'm joined by Elena Casnes-Monnas from Paris, our correspondent. You know, going by the revelry, the festivity, is it still on? Can we expect that this revelry, the festivity, to continue for a couple of more days?
Well, Les Bleus arrive home at the airport with the World Cup in just over an hour from now, and we're expecting them to be welcomed at the airport by tens of thousands of people. Then they'll be headed to the Arc de Triomphe for an open-top bus procession down the Champs-Élysées. We're expecting hundreds of thousands to turn out for that. Last night there were 1 million people on the Champs-Élysées to celebrate Les Bleus' victory, their first, of course, in 20 years, and they'll have a reception with the President at the Presidential Palace this evening. So the whole country is still very much in party mode. If we have a look at today's French papers, they're celebrating the encore, as Libération puts it, their second victory, of course, in 20 years, and the newspaper Le Figaro calls it the day of glory has arrived, which is of course a quote from the French national anthem, the Marseillaise, and in that paper they really explain well just how much France needed this big national party and just how long they've been waiting for it. They expected it, of course, 2 years ago when they were favourites in the final of the 2016 Euro that was held here in France. They were pipped at the post by Portugal, but they've been waiting a long time for this party. Inside that paper there are photos of the Carillon Bar, where of course 15 people were killed on November the 13th, 2015, and where people were dancing and singing last night. It reminds us that France have been through some difficult years and that they're looking forward for a chance to party.
But Elena, you know, it was also a revelation for the world. You know, Macron is known to have a different personality, but to see the president actually with the boys out there enjoying the game and then being part of the revelry and the festivity which took place in the men's locker room was, it's a different Macron to the world.
I think it's typical of his kind of friendly persona, of how he wants to be seen when it suits him, of course, as one of the boys, that he wants to be seen as enjoying the party. Of course, he'll be careful not to be seen as trying to get too much political capital out of this. When France won the World Cup in '98, the then President Jacques Chirac, who didn't really like football at all, really, saw a well-known bounce in his popularity, which had been rather low beforehand. But we're living in different times, and Macron knows that he risks being criticised quite sharply if he's seen as trying to take too much political capital from this. But he certainly will be, as I say, hosting a party for the team this evening, and we can't rule out that this kind of sentiment of national optimism will translate itself into a little poll bounce.
Elena, did I hear you right? A special party for the team in the evening?
Yes, as I said at the beginning, once they've gone down the Champs-Élysées in their open-top procession, they'll be hosted for a party at the presidential palace this evening. Although, of course, Macron was celebrating with the team last night in their dressing room, having champagne sprayed on him and being in their Instagram videos. So he certainly was working on his approachable, modern social media president image last night. I think this evening's reception will be slightly more formal.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much for joining us from Paris. So, as she said, there will be a special get-together with the team. With the Macron, there will be a special party, in fact, that's the word which was used. This is a huge gathering, pre-match, and after the match, everyone gathered there to celebrate the victory of France. Just a week before elections in Pakistan, the US State Department has spoken exclusively to WION. The US government has slammed mainstreaming of terror in Pakistan. They have said, and I quote, "We have repeatedly expressed our concern to Pakistani government about Lashkar-e-Taiba, including participation of LET-affiliated individuals in the elections." The US State Department also confirmed to WION that they are aware of Pakistan's own election commission has rejected the registration of the LET-affiliated Milli Muslim League. In June, earlier this year, the US State Department had amended its foreign terrorist organization designation of LET in April to add MML, which is Muslim Milli League, as an alliance of Lashkar-e-Taiba. WION Siddharth Simbal gets us this full report.
Well, it's a big development just a week before the Pakistani election. The State Department speaking to WION, lashing out at the Pakistani establishment, saying that we have expressed the concerns with the Pakistani government relating to LET and, of course, the individuals, LET-affiliated individuals who are participating in the elections. Remember, Hafiz Saeed is not only campaigning, but they are people from his support base, approximately more than 200 people from his support base who are fighting the elections on the party, another party, Allahu Akbar. That was the party that has already been registered, and earlier his own party was denied registration. The State Department has also reminded the Pakistani government about the Pakistani Election Commission not giving the due approval for the party of Hafiz Saeed. So this is a big development just before the elections, and we have seen just before the elections things not looking really great in a democratic setup of Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif is under arrest. He has been Prime Minister earlier. He was, of course, later on through a judicial coup, many would say, was removed, and then we saw what's happening to Zardari's party itself, and Imran Khan, it seemed to be a lead winner, but his former wife has been lashing out against him, against Imran Khan. It seems that the army is playing a crucial role, and army has been supporting mainstreaming of terror. And interestingly, we saw that major terror attacks taking place in Pakistan, in Balochistan and in the northern provinces, and India coming out and saying that it's really sad to see elections and elections being stopped by the entire election process coming under attack from these attacks, from these terror attacks, and India saying that it's not good for the democratic setup there. India, in a rare statement, reacted on the entire development. So a lot of things not looking good before the Pakistan elections happening. Just a week left. 25th of July is the date when the elections happen, and now the State Department coming out, speaking to WION and lashing out against the mainstreaming of terror which is taking place in Pakistan. With video journalist Sujoy Siddharth Simbal for WION in New Delhi.
Along the stuff of science fiction and futuristic cartoons, aviation technology leaders are working to make electric-powered flying taxis a reality. And now the new player to plan entry into flying taxi market is British jet engine maker Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce has designed a propulsion system for a flying taxi and is starting a search for partners to help develop a project it could help take to skies as soon as early next decade. Rolls-Royce design will be showcased in digital form at the Farnborough Air Show, which starts today. The company is looking for an airframer and a partner to provide aspects of the electrical system to help commercialize the project, Rolls-Royce said on Sunday. It had drawn up plans for electric vertical takeoff and landing system. Vehicle of flying taxi which could carry 4 to 5 people at the speed of up to 250 miles per hour for approximately 500 miles. The company which makes engines for planes, helicopters and ships joins a variety of companies racing to develop flying taxis which could revolutionize the way people travel.